Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Ahmad Nauman from University of Education Atta campus, and today is our third lecture related to the textile industry. And in today's lecture we will discuss about preparation of yarn and fabric manufacturing process. So before we start our today's lecture, I would like to have a really brief overview of what we have studied so far in our previous lectures and what we are going to discuss in our today's lecture. So in our first lecture of this series about textile industries, we have some brief introduction to what is a textile and what are the types of textiles. We also discussed briefly the textile industries of Pakistan, and then we discussed some of the textile raw materials which are used for the manufacturing of textile products. Then in second lecture we discussed some other raw materials which are used in the fabric or textile manufacturing processes, and besides we overviewed we had some overview of all the processes which are involved in the textile manufacturing, from the cultivation of cotton to the engineered or the final product. And after that overview we discussed the first step, which was the production of fiber. And after that fiber production, the next step was the cleaning and the formation of some kind of end product which can be used for further processes. So by that we discussed until that in our second lecture. So after we have the fibers, so next step is to form a fabric from those fiber, and the first step for making fiber is to make some yarns or to make some threads. So in this lecture we will discuss how the yarn is prepared from the manufactured fibers, and after the discussing in detail about the yarn preparation process, then we will discuss about the three different kinds of fabric manufacturing processes, which we will discuss about weaving and knitting and the non-woven textile products. So after the process of ginning, in which जो कॉटन होता है उसको साफ़ करके उसके जो सीड्स वगैरह को अलग करके जो है वो सेपरेट किया जाता है, उसको अलग अलग किया जाता है. देन नेक्स्ट प्रोसेस जो जब यहाँ पे सूत बनता है, जहाँ yarn की प्रिपरेशन होती है, तो वहाँ पे मोस्टली द कॉटन एक्चुअली कम्स आउट इन द फॉर्म ऑफ अ बेल कहते हैं गठरी को, जिस तरह की गठरी होती है बड़ी बड़ी. So when it is transported in the form of bale, so it still contains some vegetable matter, कुछ seeds उसके अंदर रह जाते हैं, कुछ उसके जो छिलका होता है that is left. तो वो अभी भी जो फाइबर उसको इकट्ठा करके जो गठरी बनाते हैं, that is not really pure. So the first step in the yarn preparation is to remove all the remaining vegetable matter and the other waste material inside the cotton. So the first step is the opening of that bale and then the cleaning of that bale. In this process the cotton is mostly sent through a picking machine. That machine actually first loosens and cleans the fiber, and then actually forms some very fine sheets of the clean cotton, which we call lap. उनको जो है हम lap कहते हैं. And after that the next process is blending, mixing and sketching. This sketching process actually separates the impurities from the raw material. For example, the seeds and from the raw cotton and some stems which are left over from the fiber. So जो हमारे पास पहला जो स्टेप होता है yarn preparation का, उसके अंदर जो मेन प्रोसेस ये है कि जब गिनिंग से अगर कोई चीज़ रह गई है, जो कुछ वेस्ट मटेरियल रह गया है, कुछ वेजिटेबल मैटर रह गया है, कुछ सीड्स रह गए हैं, उनको रिमूव किया जाए. उसको जो कॉटन है उसको बिल्कुल क्लीन करके इन द फॉर्म ऑफ शीट्स जो है वो उसमें से जो हमारे पास गठरियाँ आती हैं वो निकाला जाए. सो दिस इज़ द फर्स्ट स्टेप ऑफ yarn preparation. So after sketching, we get two kind of fibers. One is the long finer fibers, and other are small short fibers. So the long fiber, which are finer in nature, are mostly called as line, while the short fibers are, which are we say some coarse fibers, they are known as tow. And in actually this is what we how we define in textile industry, but there are some other definition as well. For example, in composite material, when we use these kind of fibers, so they are the tow fibers, mean which are un twisted fibers are known as tow, while the line fibers are those which are twisted and into and are like converted into some form of rope. But in textile industry, we just differentiate them based on their length and how fine or coarse they are. So the coarser fibers are the fibers of short length are known as tow, and while long and finer fibers are known as line. After cleaning and sketching of the cotton, the next step during the preparation of yarn is the carding process. Carding process is actually the parallelizing of the fibers to make them easier to spin. So जो कार्डिंग एक्चुअली प्रोसेस है, इसके अंदर जो है वो रोप बनाए जाते हैं, उसको जो हमारे पास शीट्स आ रही हैं उनको फर्दर जो है वो इन द फॉर्म ऑफ रोप जो है वो उसको किया जाता है. In mostly in the carding machine, actually it contains one big roller and it has some smaller one around it. So एक बड़ा roller होता है और उसके साथ छोटे छोटे roller होते हैं, and mostly they have small kind of teeth on their surface, these rollers. So when the cotton passes through those teeth, it gets finer, and when after passing through the carding machine, when cotton actually passes, it becomes finer, and in the form of we call it's in the form of sliver, which sliver meaning a large rope of fibers. So carding converts the cotton sheets into the rope of fibers. Then in some cases there is a process of combing, depending on what kind of cotton we are dealing with and what is application. In some it's an optional process in which mostly the shorter fibers are removed, and it creates a stronger yarn of using long fibers. The last process of the yarn preparation actually is the drying process, in which the fibers are further straightened, and combing is carried out here to make a very thick rope of the cotton fibers. So next process is the manufacturing of yarn, and that actually involves the process of spinning. So what actually happens in this, that we know that spinning is a kind of twisting technique where fiber is drawn out, it is twisted and wound onto a bobbin, creating system. So स्पिनिंग के अंदर क्या होता है कि आपके पास एक आप कह लें कि एक रॉड होता है, या उसके ऊपर जो है आप इसको बांधना शुरू करते हैं. जिस तरह से वो जो हमारे पास धागा होता है वो ऊपर उसके ऊपर रोल हुआ होता है किसी भी चीज़ के ऊपर, जो उसकी सॉफ्ट नलकी होती है, जो भी होता है. इसी तरह से जो बड़े हमारे पास सूत बना रहे होते हैं, जो यार्न मैन्युफैक्चरिंग होती है, सिमिलरली सो दे twist and wound onto the and create a bobbin during the spinning process. And then to make it a tighter bobbin, mainly because they used to rewound a bobbin again, and to get a tighter bobbin in which the fiber is held strongly and tightly. And then after that process, the next process is folding and twisting, in which plying is done by pulling yarn from two or more bobbins and then twisting them together in opposite direction. And mostly the properties of the yarn are can be determined by this process, in which the direction and amount of twist both influence the properties of the yarn. And the next process after folding and twisting is the gassing process. Gassing is the process of passing yarn through a series of Bunsen gas flames in a gassing frame in order to make thread round, smooth, and also brighter. So after making bobbins, then the gassing process is carried out, and we get a more brighter and smooth yarn. Gassing process actually results in some losses of yarn, and about if we talk about the loss of weight, it around 5 to 8% weight loss happens during the gassing process. And normally the gassed yarn is darker in shade after the gassing process. So this diagram actually shows the process in which in top we can see that there are fiber bears which are opened and then they are blended together, and then we get the small fibers which are then separated out to remove the trash in two stages, in which all the kind of trash, vegetable matter, and the seeds are actually removed from that yarn or the cotton. And then we can see the carding process, in which we can see that there is a large and some small rollers which have some teeth above their surface. So that actually result in the formation of some kind of fiber or rope from they make the rope of a cotton, and then that actually rope it is twisted on some kind of a can. Then these multiple ropes are passed through the shovels and rollers to give a more tighter and the stronger rope which we call the actually sliver, as you can see in the lower diagram. And that sliver, as we discussed in the previous slide, is rolled on the surface of a bobbin, sorry. So that actually the process of the preparation of yarn. And then the spinning process, as we discussed, is carried out, and to get the more tighter and more stronger bobbin made of ropes of the cotton or yarn. And then after that the gassing process is carried out to give a brighter and darker shade to the yarn. The yarn is manufactured and it is ready, then the next process is its utilization to form some kind of fabrics. So the fabric manufacturing process can be of various types, and commercially we can say that there are 3 different processes which are used for the manufacture of fiber using the yarn. The first process is the weaving process, in which weaving is carried out to produce fabric. And then the next step is next process is knitting process, that can be either warp knitting or weft knitting, that is used for the manufacturing of the fabric. And then there is a third type of fabric, which is non-woven fabrics, which are used in the textile industry. So in next slide we will discuss about all the 3 types of fabric manufacturing process. So the first process in the fabric manufacturing is weaving, and to get the woven fabric. So weaving is actually a process of fabric production in which we use 2 distinct sets of yarns or threads, and which are interlaced at right angles to form a fabric or a cloth. and during this process the actually the thread is woven. So we actually uh, use this process in which the one thread is in the horizontal direction and the other thread is in the vertical direction. As we can see in this diagram that we have some the two threads or the two fibers are in the actually right angle, are 90-degree perpendicular to each other. So this instrument is the weaving process actually uses this instrument which is known as loom, and loom is a device which is used to weave cloth, or it is an apparatus for making fabric by weaving yarn or thread. So the lengthway threads or the vertical thread, as we can see in this diagram, we call them warp. Also you can see this sketch here in which the vertical threads are known as warp, and the horizontal thread which are used to during the weaving process are known as wefts. And here we have some overview of the process which is used for the making of fabric using the weaving process. So multiple steps are involved in the fabric manufacturing through the weaving process, and the first step is the definitely the preparation of yarn from the spinning process. So when we have achieved the yarn after the spinning process, the first step is the winding process. So what is winding process? Winding process is actually the creation of large yarn packages which can be easily unwound, or and the main purpose of this one is to make it easier or to facilitate the process of fabric manufacturing. In other ways we can say that process of transferring yarns from ring bobbin into a suitable package is called winding. सो हमारे पास जो यार्न आता है ये डिफरेंट तरह से जो है डिफरेंट तरह के जो बॉबिन होते हैं उनकी फार्म में आता है, बट जब हमने उसको मशीन पे यूज़ करना है यार्न को फैब्रिक मैन्युफैक्चरिंग या वीविंग प्रोसेस के लिए यूज़ करना है, सो टू फैसिलिटेट दैट प्रोसेस इसको जो हमारे बॉबिन होते हैं इनको डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ जो हमारे पास होते हैं पैकेजेस में ना उसको कन्वर्ट किया जाता है. डिपेंड करता है कि आपने इसको किस तरह की मशीन में यूज़ करना है. सो जो भी पैकेज जिस तरह का भी पैकेज जो है वो उसकी फैसिलिटेट करेगा उसके वीविंग को, सो उस तरह के पैकेजेस में उसके अंदर कन्वर्ट किया जाता है और इस प्रोसेस को वाइंडिंग कहा जाता है. एंड the winding process can be actually electrical or mechanical ways. It can be carried out in both ways. And main reason why we use winding and what are the main benefit actually of the winding is that winding process actually removes different faults which are like hardiness or if there is any foreign matter present in the yarn. So when we transfer yarn from one package to another package, so it actually help us clean the yarn and remove those foreign matters, and thus it increases the quality of yarn. So next process is the warping process, which is intermediate between winding and sizing. And the warping process is basically it produces the warper beams, that's why we call it warping or beaming, and which are combined together as a single weaver beam that are used in the next process of sizing. So normally in a single warping beam it contains around 500 to 1000 actually warp ends. So after the warping process, the next step is the sizing process. So sizing consists of impregnating the yarn with particular substances which form a film on the surface of the yarn in order to improve its smoothness and tenacity during the weaving stage. In a simpler way, what we can say that is the process of applying a protective adhesive coating on the surface of yarn is called sizing. वो प्रोसेस जिसके अंदर हम यार्न के जो सरफेस है, जो हमारे पास थ्रेड है, उसको कोट करते हैं किसी एडहेसिव मटेरियल से उसकी प्रॉपर्टीज़ को इन्हांस करने के लिए, इस प्रोसेस को हम साइजिंग कहते हैं. And the main advantages which we get from the sizing process are to maintain good fabric quality through reducing hairiness and increasing the smoothness and strength of yarn. The sizing process also increases the tensile strength of cellulose yarns, and it also increases the elasticity of the yarn. And after sizing, the next process is drying these yarns into the looming process, which is used for the weaving. So the looming machines, after sizing, these yarns are transferred to the looming machines, and in the looming machine then the weaving process is carried out. And that weaving process then ultimately gives you the fabric which you want, or whatever you want to produce, depending on what kind of material you are using and what kind of machine you are using. If, for example, you are making fabric or cloth or whatever you want. So at the end you get the desired material. So this is the overview of how a fabric is produced from the yarn through the weaving process, and in the next slide we will have a small and brief animation about the weaving process. And I really hope that some of the question which might have been raised in your minds in the previous slide or on this slide will be addressed in the coming animation. Type of manufacturing process is known as knitting, and as you can see that the diagram on the top right corner, maybe many of you will be familiar with this knitting process, because our mostly we can see our moms or grandmothers doing that kind of knitting process. But nowadays the knitting at homes is not common, but it was very common. It was very common about 10 years ago. So knitting is actually a method by which yarn is manipulated to create a textile or a fabric. Different things can be made by knitting process. So it is a process of using some long needles, as you can see in this diagram, and that needles are used to knot a series of loops by using one continuous thread and form the fabric. इसके अंदर जो एक साइड होती है वहाँ पे जो धागा होता है जो है उसको मूव किया जाता है, और एक जो है वो कंसिस्टेंट होता है, एंड दैट निटिंग प्रोसेस इज एक्चुअली कैरिड आउट, एंड दिस निटिंग प्रोसेस कैन बी carried out by hand, or it can also be used by a machine. So when we consider knitting process by machine, so it can be done in two different ways. First is the weft knit, and the second process is known as warp knitting, as we discussed in the weaving process. So as you can see in the diagram on the right corner, we can say that weft knitting actually it refers to the thread that run horizontally on the loom. अगर जो भी हमारे पास thread है, अगर it is moving horizontally on the loom or the needles we are using, so that is called type of weft knitting, in which weft is a yarn that runs actually back and forth here, not up and down. But if we look at the warp kind of knitting, so here the yarn moves up and down. So it is a process in which the threads are strung together vertically on the loom. So this is the process of knitting for the fabric manufacturing process. So in the previous slide we discussed the process of weaving and knitting as the two processes which are used for the manufacturing of different kind of fabrics. The third type of fabric manufacturing process is the non-woven fabric. So non-woven fabric is a fabric-like material which is made from the both pure fiber, which can be either short or long, and they are not woven actually, but instead they are bonded together by some other means. For example, by some chemical or some mechanical ways, by heat or solvent treatment. So this term is actually used in textile manufacturing industry to denote those kind of fabrics which are neither woven or knitted. So examples can be seen in the diagram presented here. So this non-woven fabric actually are used for many processes nowadays. So some of the applications are listed here, which involve surgical gowns, caps, masks and gloves. These are used for the different in different hospitals, and they are all a type of non-woven fabric. Similarly, the wound dressings are the example of non-woven fabrics. Similarly, the other examples are plasters, the tea bags or the coffee bags, in also similarly the shopping bags. They are a common example of fabrics which are non-woven. So here are the reference materials which I have used for preparation of this lecture. So if you want to understand something in detail, or if you have any confusion, you may consult these report from HEC or the above mentioned web references, and I really hope that it will help you in better understanding. And then from today's lecture, I would hope that you guys can have some time and watch some animation videos and especially for the process in which cotton bale is used and processed to make yarn bobbin. So this is the complete process, and there are many YouTube videos present on this, and if you watch any one or two animation on that, the preparation of yarn or the spinning process, and then actually it also involves the carding and ginning processes. So if you watch those videos, so it will really help you understand the topic of making yarn preparation. And also I have added one animation in this lecture on weaving, but I would expect that you guys will also consult YouTube again for this process, weaving and knitting process, and watch some videos or animation about that. And if you do that, I think it will be really better and good for you, for your understanding. Thank you so much. That's all for today, and we will cover the remaining manufacturing process of textile industry inshallah in the next lecture. So from today's lecture, if you have any question, please feel free to ask me. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.